Welcome everyone back to the Deep Life. And today we've got a very special guest, Erin Barry. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today, Dan and Elise.
We're thrilled to have you, Erin. You are a coach, a speaker. You hold mastermind classes and retreats to help not only women, but men empower themselves to live authentically, live their truth in this journey throughout life, and empower them really to tap into the truest, fullest potential that lies within. So much to uncover and unpack, but what we'd like to do first is just lay some groundwork. And if you would so generously, perhaps give a bit of a background on how you got to this point in your life, especially from your career as a corporate woman, you're a mom, and then now you have this thriving, wonderful business and helping others discover the truth of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for offering this space. Just like everybody, our stories or our lives are a story to tell. And so it's definitely just a bunch of life experiences that did get me to this wonderful time and space of being a coach and retreat director and mastermind facilitator. And it's definitely because of my own transitions and transformations that did get me to this space. And a lot of it happened just in kind of a one clump time. And it's the accumulation of those experiences that then really filled my heart with the desire to help other people. So I really went from a people pleaser. So I was living a life of conformity, and then I switched to creating my life. And so during this phase that I was in my life, I was unhappy in multiple areas of my life. I was in an unhealthy and unhappy marriage. I worked in IT for a number of years, and it wasn't a very negative, but it wasn't a positive. That's not where my passions lied. And so once I went through reconnecting and rediscovering who I was, and that happened because I was unhappy, feeling unfulfilled, and I ended up getting connected actually through some books and through podcasts and everything that I started asking myself some of those deep inner questions. And so I defined my values and I clarified my vision. And so then I started making the choices so that I did start creating my life instead of continuing in that life of conformity and always pleasing others for their expectations and all of that. And when I realized how much smoother and happier life was when I was living by my authentic being, which is my values and vision, that I was so much more fulfilled and happier just with that I was like, I need to share this with other people. And that's when the dream and the idea of becoming a life coach and retreat director and mastermind facilitator was born. And it took me a while to get there, but that is just all part of life's transitions. So now I'm
Oh,
here.
thank you. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your vulnerability as well. It's always can be challenging to go through relationships, careers that aren't in alignment with the true purpose of our soul's desires. And it's hard to look at, and I commend you, and it's inspirational to hear stories like this. It's exactly right. You grow through what you go through. And I'm sure looking back, it kind of maybe perhaps makes sense as I sometimes look as a bird's eye view, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's like, oh, all right, that was really shitty, but I get it. Like, you don't see it when you're in the muck, but then, when you're out and your head's out of water, it's like, okay, that makes sense. And you so beautifully demonstrate that. And now your service to others is just commendable and something that we truly appreciate. And thank you for that. So kind of let's dive deep into this, because as you began figuring out who you truly were, right? Uncovering your values, the desires, what it was in you. And I loved this phrase that we talked about kind of when we met a few weeks ago, that you asked some really deep questions that I think most people ask probably in the mid range of their life. Who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? What do I want out of life? All of these really, really pivotal questions. And I love to just kind of like, let's go into there. How did that shape you becoming the coach, and then understanding perhaps maybe the divinity within you that is also the divinity within all of us, and the connection that we have to one another, and the connection to the environment around us, i.e. meaning nature?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good question. And, it's something that I've realized, I'll understand it, and then I'm still learning and still understanding more and more to it. But, awareness and connection are two very important words to me, because, when I went through that initial transition and transformation, it was awareness of myself that got me connected to that inner being. And it's kind of just like that whole circle of life.
Mm.
And, it's what does come first, being connected or being aware, and they kind of happen simultaneously. And so just allowing myself to be honest with myself. And that's a big part of what being connected to, for me, my inner being is being open and honest to myself of, one, where I am, a little bit of how did I get here, and realizing what it is, like you said, one of the questions is, what do I want? And, asking that of myself is, what's most important to me, is another one of the questions that all just goes right into that. And so when you're honest and open with yourself, that allows you the space to explore and be curious, and it grows and expands. And again, it just circles back. And so I bring that into, as often as I can, my daily living, but it's very easy to get sucked into the routine and everyday of life. So I try to bring it in every day, and then getting reconnected to that vision, because we are always growing and expanding. So when I'm coaching with people and working in the masterminds and the retreats, it's being connected to the inner being, is being connected to others, and then it is being connected to nature. And, being connected to nature is as simple as just sitting outside and, feeling the wind, listening to the trees rustle, dipping your feet in the water, walking barefoot on the earth and everything. And that, I just, at the cellular level and at the heart level, it's just really meaningful to get that connection. And so it is just the awareness and the connection.
I think that so much of your story is going to resonate with a lot of people, because you're definitely not the first person to kind of get to that point in life where you need to start asking these hard questions and kind of figuring out who you are and what you want in life. And as you were doing that, and as you were kind of diving deep within yourself and understanding your values, and also understanding that maybe you weren't living by your values, or hadn't even really thought about what your values were up to that point, and realizing that maybe you weren't living your purpose and you weren't doing the things that you wanted to be doing, was that a scary time for you? And sort of like, how did you kind of almost like develop the confidence and faith in yourself to start taking those steps toward being who you want to be and who you truly are?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It was definitely scary. I think a lot of fear in life comes from the unknown. And change is a big unknown, and just having no idea what's going to happen. And actually, that brings up one of the things. I think we get comfortable in our uncomfortableness.
Yes.
So because it's what we know. And so you end up, for me, I got confidence because I did define my values. I mean, one of the values for myself that was very significant in me starting to choose what's most important to me was my value of family. And so for a long time, I did struggle and fight for that unhealthy marriage because family is a value of mine. But then when I defined family and what I wanted to experience within family, then I realized that my family value is very strongly more of the connection that I want to have in those family relationships. And so when I realized that, and it's also with that connection, it was also experiencing life together and then being able to share those moments. And so when I realized that, then I started making those choices more and more. And so when I knew my value and knew those choices were connected more to me, that helped my confidence. And then for just the small choices that I started repeating on, just going camping or going to my grandpa's or going to the zoo with my kids, just those small choices that were fulfilling to that family value or that connection value started building more and more confidence for me to be willing and knowing that I can trust myself to take those bigger risks and those bigger life-changing choices.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a great example.
Yeah, it really is. And it's commendable. And I think it takes a lot of courage. That's why I think really the only one of the many words, but inspiration is just one that is flowing through me right now. And I'm so grateful for you to share that. And I want to circle it back to the concept of awareness. I don't want to gloss over this because that is a big word, a deep word, and something that Dan and I really truly feel is part of an awakening process. It's been kind of comical in a way that he and I have this banter, how do you make someone become aware when they already think they are? And I say it's a comical thing because I don't want to, I'm really not placing judgment or a burden or anything like that onto anybody. It's almost pivotal moments in life, whether they come through external circumstances that aren't great, jobs, relationships that maybe perhaps aren't going in the direction of your growth or trajectory. All of these are such a beautiful mechanism that life presents to us as feedback. As we learn and grow, of course, internally, the external is then going to change. So I think you so beautifully probably at some point just maybe had to come to the harsh realization that this marriage, as hard that you worked on it for family, the value, that deep-rooted value within you, just possibly wasn't serving the version of Erin that you needed to get to. You'd maybe just outgrown it, perhaps. And I don't want to take words out of your mouth. Please correct me if I'm incorrect there. But you were, in that point, aware, like something isn't right? Something needed to possibly go in the direction of moving forward. And a lot of that time is letting go of the past or past relationships, the past version of yourself. So I'd love any type of, tools that you use with your clients to help them become more aware without, steering them, or possibly, do you give them ideas on how that they can come to these conclusions themselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And of course, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, sure. As we are all unique individuals, you're right. That's very true.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people have definitely done some of their own values work and have a very clear idea of what their values and top values are. But I always begin with touching on values so that I can get to know them and what is most important to them. And also so that if they haven't done a deep dive or relooked at their values recently, they do know what exactly they want from their values, you know, how they want to experience their values. Because one of the questions that I ask when we're looking at all the different areas is, once you've identified those top values, is that value serving you, or how is that value serving you in each of the different life areas? So that definitely is one of the big things. And then also, and you know, so much of this does come from my own transitions and transformations that I've gone through, because values were significant for me, and then clarifying the visions. And you know, when you're clarifying your vision, you already said it. I mean, life, as we experience all the different moments in life, we do grow and expand, and life changes and we change, and all of our relationships, you know, our relationship with people, our relationship with our career, our relationship to nature, our relationship to, you know, our environment in all aspects. And when we create our vision, that grows and changes. And so we do have to get reconnected. And that's also, you know, it fuels the fire. It ignites the flame so that you have the desire and energy and enthusiasm to end up creating the life of, say, your dreams and desires, your vision, whatever that is. And so it just helps with the why. But so imagining, I think visualizing is huge. I know that for myself, it just helps me to get in the right, I guess, maybe energy for the day, so that when I am faced with the different choices that, you know, we don't even realize so many of the choices that we're making throughout the day, we just go on with our day. So if I'm visualizing in the morning for what it is that I want to live, and, you know, visualizing to me is just imagining many possibilities. And then that vision becomes clearer for what I want. And so that's two. And another tool that I think is really important is gratitude. And I end up using gratitude in many different ways for myself. And I think there's two that jump out to me that are very significant. And one goes somewhat along with the visualizing, and I'll categorize it more as routines and habits. But I used to go to bed at night and I'd be running my day through my mind of what I got done and what I didn't get done. And what was always prevalent was all the stuff that I didn't get done. And so I'd be making my list for the next day of what I need to do. And it would be a list for next week and for next month. And so I'd be going through all that stuff right before I went to bed. And then I would go to sleep. And in the morning, I would wake up and I was already anxious and overwhelmed and stressed, because I already had this, what felt like a mile-long to-do list. And, you know, those lists, they get longer rather than shorter when that's how you live. So I still actually do create that list. But then right before I fall asleep, I either write down my gratitudes or just list my gratitudes through my head. And doing that, when I would wake up in the morning, I was waking up with more energy and enthusiasm for the day rather than that stress and overwhelm. So that is one of the ways that I use gratitude that ended up being super significant, more for my energy level, because it was positive rather than negative. And then the second, like, very significant way that I use gratitude is actually in some of those moments when you're feeling, again, a stress and negative, just in the middle of your day, asking yourself what's most important. And for me, the most significant. And then there's, I think, that introduced this to myself for my aha experience was when my kids were younger. I was doing dishes in the kitchen and they were supposed to be doing homework in the other room. So they were sitting around the table, but they were goofing off, laughing and just having fun. I was doing the dishes, getting frustrated. I kept on yelling through the walls, get your homework done, do your homework. And I was getting more and more frustrated and angry. And I don't know what actually caused my mind to interrupt, but something did. And I asked myself, what's most important? And, their showers, their homework, them getting to bed on time, me getting my quiet time, because that's what I truly was worried about, was me getting my quiet time. But all those did not outweigh that the most important thing was my kids building their relationships with each other. And so when I was able to focus on that, then I was able to let go of the anger and stress that I was feeling because my expectations weren't being met. I mean, me having my quiet time that night was not as important as their relationships to one another. So that's what's most important to you is the question. But what I ended up feeling was gratitude, because I was like, I could connect to that and that feeling and be grateful that they were having and building good relationships with each other. So
I love that.
That's such a great example of how having present moment awareness allows you to get out of the kind of ego story of, well, they need to do this so I can do this and this, and get into like actually understanding your values and what matters, and realizing that in that moment everything was perfect.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like I'm so grateful that you shared that story, Erin, because obviously, Dan and I do not have children, but there's obviously the listeners do. And it's so relatable and such a wonderful reminder, again, kind of circling back to the interconnectedness of us all. Obviously, they're your children, so it's an extension of you, but they're teaching you in this moment as much as you are teaching them, as beautiful as that is. I think most people kind of can gloss over that, or live in a story of the past, or live in a projected future that hasn't happened yet, and to embrace that present moment, to fully feel the gratitude and your life being absolutely perfect at that moment, to have this realization. And I had literally underlined present moment awareness because I knew it was something that we were going to dive into, and then Dan said it because it so beautifully depicts that the present moment when you're void of any story. And that's kind of really how you started the show so beautifully, and we talk about that on the podcast a lot. Our ego, or false self identity, however you'd like to use the word to identify, pretty much has to live either in the past, which are our stories about who we believe ourselves to be, how we grew up, the conditions and programs, or it's trying to predict a future that hasn't happened yet. Again, simply to keep us safe as its mechanism. But when that happens, we do truly lose the present moment, and we're unaware. So I'd love to ask you, what does present moment awareness mean to you? What does that concept mean to you, and how do you live by that?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely that doing the dishes and asking that myself the question is the ideal space that I would be in all the time. But, that's not how life necessarily happens. So, I mean, one of the things that I do, and, we already talked about it, is that visualizing. And, it's just a good practice that I found for myself of quieting my mind, and then going into myself and just letting everything else go. And so that is one of the things that helps me to, I guess, take a breath and get connected to the moment. And then I'm able to more incorporate that throughout my day. So then throughout the day, how that looks is definitely different. I mean, I try to, at night I did share that I do have my lists of things to do. And so I try to have that, but so it's like focus with flexibility. And
I
so
love that. I
yeah.
love that.
And I mean, you have the focus, you know what you want, but you try to live in the moment. And it's just, it is having an awareness of that's how you want to be, so that you can, okay, let me be somewhat aware of my thoughts. If you are feeling positive or negative, if you're feeling stress and overwhelm, if you're feeling tight in your shoulders, I don't know how many times I'm like, whoa, my shoulders are way up here. I have to relax. And it's like, okay. But then kind of asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? What do I want? Or, and then choosing. And so it is, one, being aware that you want to live in the moment. And then two, when you're feeling overly negative, why? And can I interrupt that for what I do want? And then when you're feeling overly positive, that's actually just as benefit too, because why am I feeling this? What creates this? How can I keep on creating this? But I'm also very much a believer that we need our life to ebb and flow the way that it does in all the areas of our life, because I do a lot of talking about life balance. And I think as a whole, we do spirally upward growth. And so then we do get a life balance when we are focusing on what's most important now and not neglecting any of our life areas. But on a daily, I do not believe in life balance. And I like to think about a teeter-totter. I mean, when we were kids, we all loved to go and sit on the teeter-totter. And, what were we doing? We were going up and down. And if you were like me, we always tried to see if we could find that center balance. And it was fun to try and find that center balance, but it never lasted. And you didn't want it to last. You wanted the ups and downs. And so I really do like to relate our daily lives and our whole life to a teeter-totter, because we don't want just a steady emotional daily life. It
sounds
would
boring.
be something to experience then. I mean, we are here to experience life. And so that's part of what awareness is. I mean, let's just experience life. And what have we experienced? Reflection is definitely good, but don't get stuck there. And then what do you want? Knowing what you want is definitely good, but don't get stuck there. You just have to kind of find, I'm going to use the word balance, find the balance.
No, absolutely.
You can live in the now moment.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy.
It's
Cindy.
such a good analogy.
Because it's also like, it's more, when it goes up and down, it's more fun.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's fun for a second to see if you can balance, but if you just sat there all day and it didn't move, that would be a really boring toy to play with. But when you're able to go up and down, you have fun. And that's sort of like the game of life. Is there's going to be challenges, and those are kind of to make sure there's pointing us in the right direction, but there always needs to be some sort of catalyst for our growth and the evolution of our consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And oh, go ahead, Erin, please.
Well, I'm just reminded of one of my aha moments, and being able to more fully trust myself, trust the universe, all that is that, life is going forward and creating what I want. And it was right around my 40th birthday, which is my birthday's in November. And so then I would start reflecting and thinking about what I wanted. And I would do some of this stuff all the way through January, you know, reflecting on what was good, what wasn't good, what do I want, what do I want to create. And I just remember being stuck in the thought of, I want this, I want this, I want this. Why am I not there already? Why don't I already have this? Why don't I already have this? And all of a sudden, again, I don't know what the interrupt was, but something just settled over me, and it was, okay, you have this. You have this. At the time, I had just moved into this home, and this isn't my dream home, but it has very many elements of what my dream home will have. And at the time, my business was not where it is. And, you know, so I was feeling like, well, how am I going to get there? But I realized, you know, even though I'm not there, I am doing it. So it is there. And of course, one of the biggest things was, you know, I wanted a happy and harmonious family. And that was definitely there. I had decided one of the big things during this time was, you know, taking my kids to Disney World. And so my kids and my mom and I went to Disney World and had a fantastic time. And that was a great example of a happy and harmonious family, because we went and just enjoyed it. And so I just realized that, you know, you have to be aware of where you were, where you want to be, but where are you right now? And take that time to celebrate. And, you know, one of the things that I always like to say is we're always becoming and we're always growing. You know, today I am more than I was yesterday, and tomorrow I am more than I am today. And that was definitely one of those times that I realized, and all of a sudden I was laughing and had tears of, you know, crying at the same time, because I was just like, wow, you know, we don't celebrate where we are, where we came from, and then take that energy and that celebration energy and put it into trusting that you are going to keep on growing to where you want. And I think it's important for people to realize that when you are living and experiencing life, you're never going to get there because you're not supposed to. And so don't get stuck in feeling that lack. Wanting is good because it keeps you growing and keeps you striving for always becoming more, but you can't get stuck in the lack, because knowing that gap, you can recreate or reset the goals. And sometimes it's, again, awareness. Okay, this isn't where I want to go anymore. This isn't as important to me as it is now. It's time for me to let that go and move on to these other things. So I just think that I don't know, it was one of my aha moments of, okay, I need to celebrate and just keep on moving.
Beautiful. I love it. And thank you for continuing to share these aha moments, because it's helpful. It's wonderful to hear that something so simplistic as the thoughts, i.e. stories that run through our heads that are projecting fear. I don't have this. I'm not here yet. My business. And please, Dan and I are firsthand. We understand that it's, I think, part of being human. But what, so you so beautifully described, something happened, probably either a future version of yourself, your soul, the higher version, whatever that is, as an interrupt. But wait a minute, look at what you've got now. It's so beautiful. And, you know, sometimes within this wellness journey and the plethora of people that we've talked to, I mean, their stories are incredible, but, you know, whether or not you are, you know, necessarily on a retreat and having a beautiful, you know, plant medicine ceremony, and something like really profound happens and shifts your whole reality and you're a different person, power to you, power to those people. We've been there and done that. But not everybody in their day-to-day life, especially people who have, you know, very demanding careers and have children, have the opportunity to do that. So what you're so beautifully describing is this major aha moment came in the vicinity of you being you in your home and just having this profound awakening realization. It's not it's an awakening moment. There are awakening moments throughout the trajectory of our ascension process here. And I love that. It's simple, but so deep on that level to help you get to where you need to go. And I appreciate that share. Because what you're describing too throughout this whole conversation, and we can kind of dive into this now, is through your values that you've uncovered with yourself, and you know that you help your clients to dig deeper, ask these really profound questions. It's helping you to get to know yourself better, right? I'm 37, and the version of Elise that I am, I'm just beginning to understand who she truly is, what she wants out of life, what she values, deconditioning myself and all of these things. But it's birthing the new me, this newer version of me that I'm allowing to come to fruition. But what I've noticed within myself, and I think I'm picking up hints by the way that you're talking and observing your beautiful energy as you're just lovely describing all this, there starts to begin to get some freedom from the stories and trappings of our minds that have kept us in the versions of ourselves that are no longer serving us. And being able to step fully into the freedom of our authentic selves is so unbelievably empowering, that we can now choose to be different, to act differently, to think differently, to show up differently in relationships, circumstances, and all these things. And I know that you coach women and men on how to do this, live truly and authentically as the free sovereign beings that we all are. That's our inheritance. And so I kind of want to dive into what that means to you, what it means to fully be free in the authenticity of ourselves. And if you've even come to that, because I'm still learning too, and kind of like as you said before, it's all unique. We're all individuals. It's probably going to express very differently, and I think that that's part of our human experience here, right? We tend to want to follow society and the masses. We want to gain acceptance and love so that we're part of the tribe, part of society. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but there are these inherent gifts that lie just untapped within us that I think do need to be freed. They need to be almost released, let go of all of these programs and conditions to step into the authenticity of who we truly are.
Yeah, you know, I mean, so I'm going to repeat myself.
Please do.
And it's absolutely the awareness and connection. And I have to say that, you know, earlier I had said, you know, we're never going to arrive. And so, you know, I haven't arrived. And one of the things that I think repeatedly surprises me is how deep some of our, I'm going to use the word traumas, and they are little and small, but how deep some of those life experience as traumas can go, and how many layers there are to us. So I don't know how many times I faced something only to come back again and discover that, okay, I thought I was through this. Well, apparently not. So let's revisit it. But every time I do grow and become a little bit more free from whatever that is. And, you know, I think it is just the natural expansion and evolution of our being. And so, I mean, it is just that awareness and connection. And for me, I mean, living your truth is being your authentic, genuine being. So, you know, it is continually, or, you know, and when I say continually, you know, you can set it up. What season of life are you in? Do you want to do this yearly? You know, do you want to do this quarterly? You know, that's the part where we are unique and all different. But who am I? Who do I want to be? And then it's doing what's most important to you. And again, that's, you know, a reflecting of what am I passionate about? What makes me happy? What makes me laugh? What fills me with joy and love and peace? And, having an idea of what that is. And then when you know who you are, who you want to be, what you're doing, what you want to do, then you can experience more happiness and fulfillment because you are aware of what to choose. Your values and your vision, knowing who you are, knowing what you want, they become your foundation and your guidance system. So you know what choices you're making, and then you end up with that upward, continuing, spiraling growth. And then you're creating the life of your dreams and desires. You're creating your vision, and it is always expanding. So it's being your authentic being, doing what's most important to you so that you're experiencing happiness and fulfillment, and creating the life so that you're living your truth. So that's what living your truth is. And it does stem from that awareness and connection. And it just keeps on spiraling and circling in that ever upward growth.
Beautifully said. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that was magical. And I love that you're repeating yourself. I said it, like, awareness is such a multifaceted word. It's deep on every level. I feel I become more and more aware each and every day as you grow. I'm aware of whether or not I'm in the present moment, because if I'm, washing dishes and replaying an old memory or a story that's not necessarily bringing my frequency up or dragging, some anxiety and stress into my body, I'm immediately awakened in the moment. Oh my gosh, wait a minute. I'm not even aware right now. Gather myself, as you beautifully said, just drop into my body, drop into the present moment so that I can become aware. And I think what you beautifully said too, and I love that, it's kind of really uncovering I guess I'll use the word time frame as this self-discovery, self-development journey ensues. Because do you know who Peter Crone is? They call him like the mind architect. He's just he's like a psychological, philosophical, just genius. I think you'd really like him. But he says that we're all masterpieces and works in progress simultaneously. And I forget that most of the time because I have, like you, been a people pleaser my whole life. I have thought that I had to continually work on myself to better myself, to gain not only love and acceptance for myself, but for others. And it gets very tiring to do that. And you can burn yourself out very quickly. So I have to remind myself, or I get to remind myself, that I can do all the work for however many times, and then I can rest and reflect and integrate, which is such a huge part of this process that I feel like I skipped over for many years. I was learning lessons, but not integrating them. Kind of like you were saying, as perhaps traumatic experiences happen, memories that bring you down, and then they keep popping up. And it's like, okay, I gotta, like, kind of like an intuitive download, as I call them, what keeps replaying needs to be reprogrammed. And it's so beautifully, that was an aha moment for me. Like, oh my gosh, instead of beating myself up, berating myself for having this traumatic memory that keeps on coming, maybe I'm just going to sit with it and meditate and hold space and just really get quiet. If that's 30 minutes, if it's an hour, allowing myself to actually hear the dialogue and how the personality structure of, whether it's a childhood, a teen, the Elise in her 20s, that whatever's coming up, to just allow this space to hear what needs to, and then feel it, and then feel within my body what's coming up so that I can process it and integrate what is necessary.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that's really been coming up for me a lot right now too, in my desire that I just wish that I understood that so much more than what I do. But it is absolutely so important to be with whatever is coming up for you so that you can just allow it to flow through you, which can be a painful experience, but it's actually more painful to resist it. And I just wish that I understand more of the science behind it, I guess, the
We'll
mental
leave that to the
working.
scientists and
Yes,
and the quantum physics.
exactly.
That's them.
Yes. And that's something that I have to remind myself too. So often, just knowing what you want is enough. I mean, you don't always have to know this is exactly how I'm going to get there. I mean, you have to take actions, but you don't have to know exactly how everything is going to happen.
The
There
how can get in
is,
the way sometimes. The how becomes almost a limitation where we think there's this one
yes,
way that it has to be, but there's infinite possibilities.
exactly, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
always constantly changing.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's like the analogy you keep using of that upward spiral, where it's like with each level that we move up, we have greater awareness. So then these
Yes,
same things come up, but we're able to see them from a whole new perspective. And what used to seem like a big problem or seem like a roadblock becomes a path and becomes like something
yes,
that's helping us. And we realize that we have been sort of supported and guided this whole way.
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I want to kind of just, as we are wrapping up here, want to touch on a few other things. And I want to ask you now, working with clients, helping people having these masterminds and all of those retreats, like tapping into living fully, like living truly through your heart center and purpose. What does that mean to you? And how do you kind of facilitate that in your coaching others to live fully once we've got, these values, the goals, perhaps the gratitude, the awareness and everything, like, and you repeat yourself if it is the concept. Absolutely. Like I said, I love it. But the question is, it's so beautifully posed, am I fully living? Because typically, I want to always speak from experience. I thought I was living maybe, 10, 15 years ago, but I think what I was doing was just surviving. And that typically comes from kind of recreating the same patterns, the subconscious beliefs of who we think we need to be or show up in the world as we've been conditioned. And then when, Dan and I began this kind of journey, and although it was kind of at the same time, I was probably a little bit later than him, discovering and asking these questions, what do I truly want? What are my values? It helped me understand, oh my gosh, I've been living in so much stress, so much anxiety. And I thought that I was like handling it really well because I was being super productive and crossing things off my list. And the exact same thing would happen to me at night. I would just berate myself of things that I didn't do, I didn't accomplish. Oh, I did this incorrect. And it left me so defeated and just recreating almost a groundhog day of the next day of how I lived, and an awful just and it hurts. And for people that have gone through this journey and understanding that, okay, wait a minute, I was in survival mode, but here I am emerging into a thriving life, one that I'm trying to create from a place of authenticity and true love for myself. But for most people, I think that they could possibly be stuck in the survival instead of fully living their life.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And, the first thing that comes to my mind is that we are experiential beings.
Mm.
And so when I'm asking, am I fully living? It's also, am I experiencing what I want to experience? And so it definitely is circling back to those questions. Where am I? Where do I want to go? And what am I doing? What do I want to do? What do I want to experience? I've found that it's easy throughout all of our life, as we continue living, to get stuck and feel like we're just going around in circles and living day in and day out rather than, growing. And one, have grace with yourself, because just recognizing, okay, that I'm stuck, you're going to be able to start moving. And, just like how I shared with my 40th birthday, I thought I was just stuck in this spot. But when I sat down and, had this aha moment and experience of, okay, I am continually becoming, that I was able to, just let go and just take in that, okay, I am going to get there and I can just trust. But it definitely does become a hard thing. So I'm going to go back to routines and habits. And even the routines and habits that you create for yourself that are positive need to be shaken up and need to be changed. You need to stir the pot every once in a while, because you can get stuck and plateau or start going around in circles because, you're focused on what you want to create, and you can be living in that now moment. And then all of a sudden you're now stuck of living too much in the same thing. And so that's when I like to think about that upward spiraling growth, and also the life wheel when you're thinking of all the different areas of your life and asking yourself the question of what's most important now. And so it's definitely having the idea of your vision and what you want to create, but looking at that, a lot of times that's what it takes is, okay, what do I want for me now? Has that changed? Do I need to change my vision for what I'm trying to create? And so for me right now, I'm actually experiencing that a little bit myself when I'm looking at the retreats. Way back when I first had the idea, it started with me wanting to have my own retreat center. And then life happened and I had let that vision go. Well, now I'm circling back to it. Now it's back in my mind that I do actually want to have my own retreat center again, and not just go and find other places to have my retreats, but have my own space to host the retreats. And so, when I asked myself, am I fully living, that, well, do you know what? I am a little bit stuck in what I am doing with Live Your Truth Journey right now. I actually do want to elevate the masterminds, and I want to expand the retreats so that they are my own retreat center. And so I think that answers your question, actually.
No, it did. It's so beautiful. I love that you've also brought up many times. It's really being honest with yourself.
Yes.
I mean, what a beautiful quality to cultivate within yourself, to gain trust, to really truly understand what you want, and to really just be like, am I moving? Like, am I moving in the direction that I want to go, or am I not? Like, because my actions and habits and patterns, those day-to-day routines, they tell you everything. Like I was saying, the Groundhog Day, if you're just waking up and doing things the same, there's also nothing wrong with that. If you do feel fulfilled, again, that's wonderful. But if you've got this immense goal or vision or a tug at that heart, something's pulling your heart to get you to the next level, and you're stagnant, the being honest with yourself is something that I think is such a beautiful reminder. So thank you for that.
Well, and you had brought it up earlier too. And I think it's important for everybody to realize that, however you want to look at your life, if you want to look at it as seasons of your life, or however you want to look at it. But, I had said, have grace with yourself. And you had said, make sure that you rest and relax. And it is so important to not always push, and, I need to do this. But it is also important to, okay, do you know what? Right now I am in a season of life where I am just going to coast. I'm just going to, relax with life and just, I want to always be going with the flow, but there's different levels of going with the flow. There's different energies. There is a time for rest. There is a time for dancing. There is a time for exploring. And so you need to, and that's where you have to be somewhat connected, again, in a different way to your inner being of what do you need for your body, mind, and spirit, your soul? You know, I mean, there are, like you said, the awareness goes so deep in so many different directions.
Well, it's kind of like it points to, like you mentioned earlier, like there's this beautiful balance between having your vision and your routines and your habits and having your systems in place, and then also letting go and surrendering. And it's like I said, like we don't actually know the how, so we can have this idea of ourself, and then by being present in the moment and being aware of what we're feeling and what we're experiencing, then we're able to tap into, is this the time for rest? Is this the time to take action steps? Do I need to kind of wait for whatever's coming next because I don't actually know what it is? And it all kind of works itself out when you are constantly present and aware of who you are and who you're becoming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Erin, this has just been such a fabulous conversation. I feel like we could, of course, keep going. Your messages, your wisdom, your knowledge, your energy and light are just a beacon of inspiration, as I mentioned before. And we always want to leave the space open if you believe that we didn't touch upon anything, or if there's any last messages in your heart that you'd like to share, please do so. But wrapping up as well, I want to make sure that people really understand what it is to work with you if they would like to dive deeper into what you do and coaching and your retreats and everything like that. So if you could describe a little bit on how you do that, and please let us know where we can direct people, your website, which I know is Live Your Truth Journey, but any other, accounts or social media, anything like that we can direct our listeners to.
Yeah, thank you. Working with me is definitely the awareness and the connection. So
people know that by now.
Yeah, I think they do. But coaching and even the mastermind and the retreat. But even I want to, I guess, emphasize with the coaching when it's a one-on-one, when I'm just coaching one individual, we are creating a co-creative relationship. And so, I'm coming and standing beside you. I am supporting you. I am opening you to your awareness. I am seeing things from a different perspective and hopefully, showing you and opening you to other perspectives. And so that is, I guess, kind of the most important thing for people to know about working with me is that I'm coming and standing and being in your space and, accepting you for you being who you are with no judgment. And I might push you and I'm going to hold you accountable, but it's for your growth and for your being. So it's awareness and connection again.
That's beautiful. I think that is such a magical way to have a co-creation where you're teaching, but also learning at the same time, which in turn makes you a better coach and mentor. And that's wonderful. So where can we direct people, Erin, to find you if they're interested?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have my website. It's liveyourtruthjourney.com. And then for social media, I am out on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So
awesome. Wonderful. Erin, again, we just think you are so grateful the universe has brought this connection and relationship together. And we cannot thank you for speaking your truth, living your truth, and embodying that to help others. So thank you, Erin.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. You too. I just love sharing our stories, and I am grateful that you guys have created this space to bring everybody together that you do. Thank you.